All right, what's up, y'all? It's oh, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I did the past 2 episodes, so we'll just do a little intro with Frank the guitar. Oh, yeah, bro. Why not? This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Here at In the Image Clothing Company, we have three sides to things. The podcast with discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have In the Image Clothing Company music, where we just do awesome stuff with music, help people with instrument setups and body positioning, doing music things, singing, all things that come with music that we approach it with. Then we have, as well as those two things, just the main side of things in the Image Clothing Company, the main side, where we are called In the Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. So we allow our bodies to work in their only natural working positions, and we address it through the skeletal system of the body because the fat content comes and goes, and so does the muscle mass at different times in our lives. But the foundation will always remain, just like within the gospel of Jesus Christ, building our houses upon a firm foundation, which is the rock. The rock of our foundation, Jesus Christ. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give it a little bit of a spiel rundown about what we are as a company. I kind of just did, but for every human being, clothing needs to sit where the pants are up above the hips, entirely off of the hips, so the hips have all their naturally moving ranges of motion. And slightly higher in the front than in the rear for the waistband of the pants, because our core, in order to stay activated, which is how it would always work, and the only way it actually does work, unless it was altered, that's just how it would be, it needs to stay activated and it needs to contract. So that's the angle that the pants have to be in to allow that to happen. Otherwise, you are fighting a fight that no human would ever win against a waistline pulling your pants down in the front, stretching out your core muscles that we're trying to contract. Now, the tops that we wear, the seams on the tops of the shoulders need to sit behind that little bone that's the other end of the collarbone, and that just allows your shoulders to be in their neutral position. And then right at the very edges for those edge seams of the shoulders, button-ups are different. The shoulder seam is like a band of material rather than just a seam, so button-ups just naturally sit in a good location, but as long as they're your size. So two things that are prerequisites just to allow the body to be unaltered, in addition to just having clothing sit where it needs to. Lacing the shoes that we wear with the technique that we use, as in the Image Clothing Company. You can find that wherever you find us online. Being 2025, we do have the internet and you can find us. With that technique, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet to have an even foundation traveling up the rest of our bodies. And the second prerequisite is to remove all tags from our clothing, including if there are any within our shoes. If you can't get them quite out all the way, if you can just roughen them up or put slits into them with a knife or scissors or anything that you can use just to get some texture to those, so that our flexion of our ankles and that natural gripped arch of the foot is unaltered. All right, let's get into this. This is episode 30 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm going to talk about driving. And I'm going to talk about this in a way that's almost more just a story about my own personal experience that everybody and anybody who has driven a vehicle can relate to. Yeah, that's how I'm going to approach this. It's not going to be so much informational as far as how to set up the seating position / steering wheel / seat belt, as much as just giving my own personal story. I actually made a video we have a video, is how I'm going to word that, for In the Image Clothing Company, the main side of things, titled How Driving Affects Body Mechanics. That's how I word things when it comes to how things are affecting our bodies, because our bodies are just a mechanical machine. So, as well as a lot of other ways, they're just a machine. Electrical system, their fluid exchanging system, as far as drinking fluids, we breathe, and that's just a system. The body's just a functioning machine. The circulatory system pumping blood. So, yeah, it's mostly like story time episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Now, I live in the United States of America currently, and I have my entire life up until this point. I'm 25. When I was 15 years old, I got what's called a learner's permit, which is what they give you that allows you to operate a vehicle with an adult in the car, like somebody who's your legal guardian, is I think how it actually is like set up. So you can operate a vehicle, but only with somebody who's experienced within there until you're 16 years old. So the first year of driving. Yes. So I started driving when I was 15 years old. And then when I was 16 years old, I got my driver's license to where I could just operate a vehicle by myself. And then now, since then, that would have been 9 years ago since I got my actual license, I have just been driving vehicles as I do and when I do. And for a lot of that time, it was a lot of time. Now, here's the thing. I basically my whole life wore oversized hand-me-down clothing. There's no problem with hand-me-downs, right? If you don't understand what that term means, or if it doesn't mean the same thing where you're at as it does around here, it's, clothing you got from other people that has been worn before, passed down usually is what hand-me-down means. Like it's handed down from somebody, usually in those cases worded that way, like your parent or your older sibling or an older cousin, they grew out of it and then you wear it. Pretty much my whole life I was wearing oversized clothing. For whatever reason it was oversized, meaning there was many reasons to that. I was just so out of touch with what it meant for clothing to actually fit. Also, clothing designs, if they're not centered and allowing the body to just work, then it's mostly the most common thing in that case is to wear clothing oversized, because if it's fitting pretty much right on where the shoulders move and things, but it's imbalanced, like the dreaded collar seam and anything else within clothing, any item of clothing in any way, then it seems more comfortable for it to be oversized. And so that's just such a common thing for people to do, but it's so damaging to the body. Clothing has to fit as correct as we can get it to, or else our bodies are being very, very, very altered. So I was wearing oversized clothing for most all my life up until very recently. Now I have since founded In the Image Clothing Company, that's what this podcast is, In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. But I would drive so often. Driving was something that was like, to me, it felt like an escape. It felt like a place that I had a little bit of control over my own doings and my own, place to go. I never really felt like I had a say growing up. A lot of that was for a lot of different reasons. But yes, when I would drive, I got my first car, like a car that was just my own, when I was 16. And it was a manual transmission, so a vehicle with a clutch, right? And you shift the gears with your own hand rather than the car doing it for you. Press the clutch and the gas and the brake. You're using both feet on 3 different pedals. And it was just a little cute 4-wheel drive car. I would drive that thing all the time. But here's the thing. I talk about all the time how, as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, the reason why I am who I am, and I word that in a way that makes a lot of sense to me, because this company could have been founded or tried to be ran by anybody, but I have had so much physical experience with my own body, in the sense of 2 full open heart surgeries and 4 other minor surgeries on my heart, wearing clothing that was oversized for so many years, doing so many damaging things to my body, parkour, right, doing flips outside, landing in poor positions with in oversized clothing and shoes laced and tied. Very, very much incorrect. I went 3 to 4 years wearing 6-inch leather waterproof boots with an inch tall heel that were laced and tied incorrect, plus wrapped around the upper and then back and tied again, the same incorrect position. So I've had so much physical experience with imbalances to where I feel like unless there is somebody else that was like as fit to be the founder of this company, what I'm saying is like I feel like this company has to be had, and like I was the one placed here to be the founder of it. So yeah, driving was one of those things for me for years that gave me that what I'm calling physical experience as far as physical imbalances. Because driving a manual transmission, your left leg is pressing the clutch all the way to the floor and then lifting it all the way out. Each gear you have to shift between. And your right leg is usually a little bit off-centered and pressing the gas pedal and then sometimes the brake, but normally you're on the gas a lot more than you're on the brake because if you're driving somewhere, your intent is to move the vehicle. So you're on the gas more than you're on the brake. And so you're doing such different things from left foot to right foot. And I was within clothing that was so imbalanced already. And spending so much time driving, my seating position was just very, very who knows is how I'm going to word it. Like I wasn't knowing how to allow my body to just work within a vehicle. And then also, at least as of now, once I got full grown, which was probably around 17 years old when I was actually full grown, give or take, right around 17. I'm 6'2" tall, so I'm well above average height for just any person across the globe. And so I don't quite fit in vehicles as comfortably as somebody who's average height or closer to it. And then vehicles themselves, the seating position is something that's not natural for the human body at all. So I spent just an immense amount of time driving, and it was a lot, man, a lot to the body. So this is the thing. I always talk about how the patternings that we get into, because that's what we do within In the Image Clothing Company, is get out of all these chronic patternings that we get into. And I have mentioned, always will be this way, we are called In the Image Clothing Company, but we are not just about clothing. We will be selling 100% natural material clothing that works amazing for the human body, but it's not just about clothing. It's just that's the thing that has the highest potential to alter our bodies because it's always placed on us. But we're going to always be discussing sleep and eating and driving and walking and sitting naturally and all these things that the human body does because we're just about the human body's natural function, the only way that our God designed it to actually work. So driving is a huge thing because a lot of people spend a lot of time in vehicles, and I am, again, like I said, it's not out of my own saying this because of what I have done, but because of what I've been given. I have been placed in the position to have all this experience with driving and all the physical imbalances that have come from that. So driving manual transmissions for so many years, I had such such an imbalance that got created within my body. The hips are just huge with that because you have to lift your left leg so much off of the seat. You can tweak the seating position a lot to do certain things, but there's so much like hip flexion on that left leg to lift your knee up and press it back down as far as pushing that clutch and lifting it up. And the right foot doesn't do that the same. The right side of your body, your foot is going up and down. As in, you take a little bit of pressure off the gas, well, all of the pressure off of the gas with your right foot, but that's just dorsiflexion of your right ankle. And your left foot is your whole leg going in and out like a lot, so much more than your right as far as the distance. And so that's something that you're just doing repetitively over and over and over and over and over again. And your right hand, at least on a left-handed drive car, right? Because that way the shifter would be in the center of the vehicle on your right side. As you're doing this motion different with your left versus right leg and so much movement within your body, your right arm has to shift in between what your feet are doing to go through each gear. So your body is in such an imbalance. And then if you're shifting with your right arm, your left hand is on the wheel. So you're like this. If you're just listening to this in audio form only, then you can't see my visual examples, but you can see what I'm talking about. But yes, this podcast, In the Image Clothing Company podcast, is available in both visual plus audio, as well as just audio only. So yeah, I mean, the body is just in such an imbalance when driving, especially a manual transmission vehicle. And then the seatbelt, so common for, and I showed this within the video I referenced of how driving affects body mechanics for the main company side of things. Seatbelts so commonly will actually twist your hips as they tighten. And so I showed how to just address that, but within that video. So my hips are being rotated by the seatbelt and pressing the clutch again and again and again and again and again. And my other foot is just kind of flexing and not, but my right foot was the one that was tied incorrect because I'm right-handed. And I'm always discussing that somewhere around 85% of the population of the earth is right-handed, at least as of current time. And so a knot you'd be tying is more common to be tying like toward that side for both feet, which is imbalanced. So that right foot can't actually dorsiflex anywhere near normal. And the arch isn't anywhere near normally activated within that foot, traveling up the entire right side of the body. And so doing all this within an imbalance to that extent for so many years, I got imbalanced, man. Like, very, very much so. Now, and then also the dreaded collar seam. You know, we have that little seam up on t-shirts that we have our modification for, that I have quote unquote coined the term dreaded collar seam. And I have found a modification that I have shown how to do. That will place your shoulder on the left because it's almost always on the left. It's rare for it to be on the other side. That will place that shoulder higher, plus the seat belt is on your shoulder, so your right arm is trying to reach because your left is being pinned by the seat belt, but you're also being pulled external from the shoelace, and so you can't actually reach with an internal natural reach on the right side. So I didn't know all these things at the time for years of driving and hours a day within those years of driving. So I got into terrible, terrible, terrible imbalances just in those ways from operating a vehicle. So I want to just kind of explain a little bit of my story with that for some people to relate to and to help people. In the Image Clothing Company just speaks truth. So yeah, this is happening to people. Now, spending that much time within a car, the human body doesn't want to be sitting in that kind of position anyway. A seated position, somewhere around a 90-degree bend at the knees and hips, is just unnatural. Putting weight onto your hamstrings, which is the big muscle on the rear of your upper leg that spans from like your knees up to your hips, that is just pressing into a muscle that has to contract to activate and to have strength within it. And so sitting at that height anywhere at all is unnatural for the human body. And then doing all these positions that are imbalanced within a car, a vehicle, right, at the same time. So I did that for years, and a lot of that was my imbalance. So I think a big thing is, this might be kind of as long as this episode of the podcast for this one will be, episode 30 on driving. But I wanted to document this within the podcast for sure, because as much as we talk about it any and everywhere else within In the Image Clothing Company, I want it to be a documented episode of the podcast, and for this time period as well. Right at the beginning of 2025, I've just done an episode on vegetarianism. I did an episode on just some things that I would say are pretty major, hard-hitting things. Again, universal, unchanging truths that will always apply to human beings forever. And right at the beginning of this year, 2025, these are some good things that I feel is great to have documented right now, and not even really just about me feeling it, but I mean, I'm being prompted to make these episodes, the specific ones that I am, and kind of like rapid fire, if you will. So, cool. Now, I want to just say that all of these patternings that our bodies get into, to at least a certain degree, are reversible. We are getting into patternings. We're not getting into a permanent state of being. So all this chronic pain that people are experiencing, we address that here at In the Image Clothing Company, and we discuss the truth of it. Not giving you things to do, but just how to allow the body to work. And we just discuss why the body isn't being allowed to work within a modern 2025, as of today's year, that is just man-made, and the body is only designed to work within nature. The body is natural. So we just show how to go through this world and do it the way that our bodies will, when the world itself, being like the man-made part of the world, is unnatural. So driving vehicles is just something that the body doesn't actually do, but we can do a lot of things to make it very, very close to being able to accommodate for the body's natural workings, and we show those things. I have already, and we will continue to talk about these things as we go and grow as the company that we are, In the Image Clothing Company. So that is what I'm going to say. I'm going to wrap this up just like that. This is episode 30 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. My name is Evan Strong, the founder, centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ. Everything is natural. Everything that men make, men can also mean women, but human beings, everything that we put together and try to advance or build is unnatural. Our God gave us this earth, and we have to do all that we can to keep it as it is, because we don't get to decide how it works, and we are not Mother Nature, and she will reclaim everything. That's the thing, these things like vehicles, that's what I'm saying, relating this within the gospel. Well, I want to be very clear to say, not relating this to the gospel. The gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. So anything that we are ever talking about that is just real, it is the gospel. And that is what In the Image Clothing Company is. But what I'm saying is, we can create vehicles as human beings. We can put things together, melt down metal and put it into this shape of a body of a car, and we can create tires and engines and place things into it and pump oil out of the earth and refine it and cause it to lubricate these engines that we have created. And we can take oil and whatever else we use and anything to create petrol or gasoline or diesel and fuel this machine that us human beings have placed together like building blocks. But Mother Nature, really our God, reclaims everything back to the earth. If you let a car sit out there and just do what it will do, it will just rot back into earth. Just as our bodies do, we were pulled from the clay and we will return to it. So that's what I mean when I say vehicles are unnatural. They will always return to being just what they were when we gathered the materials to create them. Because they're still that in the shape of a car or a vehicle, but they just return to earth, as everything does. So, yeah. Okay. I feel like I just cut it right there like that. I don't know if I even finished my thought that I was saying right before that, but that's where I feel like I am done with this. Not that I'm done, I just feel very content with saying that. So, In the Image Clothing Company, universal truth, the gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. Don't believe me. Don't believe us as a company, but it is. Thank you.